Alien girl asked the human to remove her armor so she could breathe. But what happened next? Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Lieutenant Kai Mercer. The blast hit before he even registered the warning. A white flash, a punch of heat, and then the metal corridor folded like paper behind him. Dust rained down in choking clouds as Kai pushed himself up, ears ringing. His visor flickered, struggling to reboot after the shockwave. He staggered to his feet, bracing a hand against the warped bulkhead, the air tasting like burnt circuits and ozone. A second tremor rippled through the outpost, somewhere deeper in the collapsed wing, and his HUD blinked with a pulsing marker. One life sign. Weak. Unknown species. Kai tightened his grip on his handheld scanner, the small device buzzing against his palm as it guided him through the wreckage. He wasn't a frontline soldier, never pretended to be. Engineering officers weren't meant to run into imploding structures. But someone was still alive in here, and walking away had never been in his nature. He ducked under a fallen support beam, boots crunching over shattered glass, and eased into a chamber split open by the blast. Toxic haze drifted from ruptured pipes, glowing faintly in the dim emergency lights. Then he saw her. A warrior. Seryth. 8 feet tall when standing, but now trapped beneath a jagged column of metal pinning her torso. Her armor, a living exoshell of matte silver plates, pulsed erratically like a machine having a seizure. Vents along her ribs were sealed shut, and the faint sound she made wasn't a growl. It was a strangled gasp. Kai froze only a moment, long enough for training to shout at him about treaties and danger and species protocol. But the warrior's eyes cut through that noise. They were dimming. And terrified. He moved closer, crouching beside her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, and her voice scraped out, rough and trembling. "Human, remove the armor. I can't breathe." Kai blinked hard. "If I touch it, it could kill both of us." "It's malfunctioning," she rasped. "Misbinding, crushing my lungs. Override nodes exposed." She tried lifting a hand, but the armor seized her limbs with a metallic twitch. She let out a broken sound that tightened Kai's chest more than the smoke ever could. "Please," he scanned her quickly. She was right. The armor's biocircuitry had locked itself into a catastrophic loop. If it didn't release pressure soon, her thoracic cavity would collapse completely. Kai swallowed. "Okay, I'm going to help you, but I need you to stay still." A spark snapped from her shoulder plate at the word help, the exoshell reacting violently to his proximity. Kai flinched as the stinger spine protrusions rattled awake like warning fangs. Her gaze sharpened through the pain. It senses intent. If you hesitate, it will strike. Great. No pressure. He steadied his breath, thumbed open his toolkit, and pulled out a small probe. The override nodes were glowing faintly beneath the fractured plating near her collar. If he hit the wrong one, the armor would think he was trying to breach it, and then it would defend her. Lethally. Kai slid his hand beneath the shaking metal, heat washing over his knuckles. The armor vibrated harder, microblades twitching like they wanted blood. "Easy," he whispered, unsure if he was speaking to her or the armor. "I'm just trying to fix you." Her breath hitched, shallow and fading. Kai pressed the probe to the first node. A jolt of electric pain shot up his arm, bright and sharp enough to make him shout. But the plate hissed open half an inch. He went for the second node. Another shock, harder. His hand trembled, vision blurring at the edges. The plate opened wider. Air rushed in around her chest with a desperate shudder. One more. Kai gritted out, jaw locked. The third node discharged a brutal arc that dropped him to one knee, but he forced the probe down until the armor cracked apart, and the vents along her ribs snapped open with a rush of cold vapor. She inhaled like someone breaking the surface of deep water. Kai collapsed beside her, chest heaving, arm numb. The warrior blinked slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Human, why would you risk your life?" He exhaled, shaky butt. "Sure. Because you couldn't breathe." Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable, the armor's plates still quivering around her like a wounded animal deciding whether to trust him. And somewhere deep in the ruins above them, something heavy shifted, sending another low groan through the failing structure. The danger wasn't over. Not even close. Lieutenant Kai Mercer's arm was still trembling from the electrical shocks when the ceiling groaned again, a deep metallic warning that echoed through the fractured chamber. Heat bled from the ruptured conduits above them, mixing with the cold vapor pouring from the warrior's newly opened vents. Kai forced himself upright, his breath rasping in his helmet as he steadied against a half-collapsed support beam. Aelyra Voss, freed but barely conscious, shifted her gaze toward him. Her pupils glowed faintly, the bioluminescent shimmer returning with each steady inhale. The armor's living segments twitched like an injured animal clinging to survival. "Do not attempt to move me yet," she said, voice strained but clearer than before. "My armor is recalibrating." Kai checked his scanner, the small device flickering with static from environmental interference. "We cannot stay here. The entire West Wing is losing structural integrity." A shockwave rumbled under the floor, showering them with dust. Aelyra tried to prop herself on an elbow, but winced as the armor seized in response. "My lower plates are still locked." The misbind damaged deeper nodes. Kai exhaled. "Tell me what to do." Her eyes narrowed, studying him not with suspicion now, but with something closer to confusion. Humans do not assist Seryth warriors. Not without an order. Not without payment. Kai shrugged, trying to hide the way his breath hitched from pain. "I do not care about orders. I saw someone dying. That was enough." The armor pulsed again, this time warmer, its color shifting toward steady silver as it recognized her regaining consciousness. Aelyra lowered her gaze. "There is an emergency access tunnel through the laboratory sector. It should lead us to the canyon ridge. But I will not be able to walk without stabilizing the spinal brace." Kai blinked sweat from his lashes. "Show me the nodes. I will stabilize them manually." Her expression was unreadable. "If you touch the wrong point, the armor will sever your hand." "Good incentive to get it right," Kai muttered, kneeling beside her. She hesitated before exposing the damaged section along her spine. The plates parted, revealing a glowing mesh of organic circuitry and sharp, needle-like conductors. Kai's stomach twisted. He had repaired everything from starship power injectors to malfunctioning exosuits. But this was different. This was alive. He steadied the probe, sliding it between two pulsing filaments. A jolt shook him, but he did not stop. Aelyra hissed, biting back a sound of pain as the armor spasmed. "Easy," Kai whispered. "We are close." He rotated the probe exactly 1/4 turn. The armor stiffened, then released with a shuddering exhale of energy. Aelyra's muscles loosened, and she tested her weight slowly. "The brace is stable enough," she breathed. "I can walk." Another explosion boomed somewhere above them. The ceiling cracked, beams snapping like bones. Kai reached out, gripping her arm. Her armor did not lash out this time. If anything, it seemed to yield under his touch. They made their way toward the corridor, half-twisted metal scraping against Kai's suit as they climbed over debris. Aelyra moved with limping precision, each step restoring more of her natural warrior grace. When they reached the lab access hall, Kai froze, raising a hand. 2 Seryth scout drones hovered ahead, their sensors sweeping the corridor with a predatory hum. Aelyra inhaled sharply. "They will identify you as hostile immediately. Not if they do not see me," Kai whispered, spotting a shattered console. He crossed to it and ripped free a handful of sparking cables. "You are going to overload their pattern reader," she realized. "If I time it right." The drones pivoted, closing in. Kai jammed the cables into the exposed junction. A bright surge of electricity screamed through the hall. The drones convulsed midair, their lights flickering before they crashed to the ground in smoking pieces. Kai collapsed to a knee, the exertion catching up to him. Aelyra stared at him, stunned. "You are an engineer," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Yet you behave like a frontline soldier." "I just do what needs doing," Kai said, rising unsteadily. The warrior's gaze lingered on him, the faintest shift in her expression betraying something softer than gratitude. "Lieutenant Kai Mercer," she said, her voice carrying a weight he did not yet understand. "You are unlike any human I have met." Before he could respond, a distant metallic howl echoed through the ruins. "Reinforcements." Aelyra stiffened. "We must go. The canyon ridge is our only chance of escape." Kai nodded, But as they stepped into the next passage, his scanner chimed with a chilling alert. Multiple life signs. Incoming fast. Aelyra drew in a breath, her armor plates snapping into defensive alignment despite their recent damage. She turned to him, eyes fierce. Stay behind me. Kai tightened his grip on his tool pack, pulse hammering. Whatever waited in the dark ahead, neither of them would be facing it alone. Icy dust drifted through the fractured passage as Lieutenant Kai Mercer tightened his grip on his tool pack, pulse thundering against the inside of his helmet. The life sign alarms on his scanner beat in quick, urgent flashes, marking movement closing in through the ruins. Aelyra Voss stepped ahead of him, her tall frame steady despite the damage laced through her armor. The fractured plates shifted into a subtle defensive pattern, glowing faintly along the seams like a creature baring its teeth. Her voice dropped low, measured. 3 hostiles. Seryth hunters. They track distress signatures. They believe I am a failing combatant. Kai swallowed. Which means they are not coming to rescue you. No, she replied. They are coming to end me. The words hung in the air like frost. The hunter unit rounded the corner in a synchronized trio of metallic steps, each clad in matte armor darker than Aelyra's, built for execution rather than war. Their blades hummed with a low, vibrating charge. Kai felt the instinct to step back, but the floor groaned behind him, reminding him that retreat was not an option. Aelyra activated a partial power cycle, her armor flickering as it tried to boost strength output. It only managed to spark. She braced herself anyway. Stay behind me, she repeated, eyes locked forward. The first hunter lunged. Aelyra intercepted the strike with the armored side of her forearm, the impact ringing against the metal walls. She pivoted, delivering a sharp kick that sent the attacker crashing into the debris. The second hunter charged, blade arcing toward her ribs. Kai did not think. He grabbed a discarded pipe from the rubble and hurled it at the attacker's head. It struck with a hollow clang that disrupted the strike long enough for Aelyra to counter. She slammed her elbow into its throat plating and sent it sprawling. Kai blinked. Did that actually help? Surprisingly, she answered with a strained breath. Try not to die? Doing it. The third hunter, larger than the others, targeted Kai. It moved with terrifying precision, clearly identifying him as the weakest link. Kai stumbled back, raising his arms instinctively. Aelyra. She was already moving. With a burst of speed from her partially restored brace, she threw herself between them, catching the hunter's blade with both hands. Sparks exploded across the room as she forced the weapon upward. The hunter shoved back, its strength overwhelming in a slow, relentless push. Kai reached into his tool pack and yanked out his plasma cutter. He flicked it on, the blue arc snapping to life with a hiss. He charged forward, slashing the cutter across the hunter's knee joint. The machine-like warrior buckled, metal shrieking as its leg collapsed. Aelyra seized the moment. She tore the blade from its grip and drove it into the hunter's core. The unit sputtered, lights flickering out. Silence fell hard. Kai gasped for breath, the air thick with metallic dust. Aelyra straightened slowly, wiping the blood-like coolant from her armored forearm. She turned to him, her voice softer now. You risked yourself again. I was not about to stand there and watch them cut you down. Her gaze lingered on him, studying the human who should have retreated long ago. The armor along her shoulders shifted, not in hostility this time, but in something that resembled acknowledgement. She reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. The contact surprised them both. You act without hesitation, she said quietly. That is dangerous for a human. It seems to be working, Kai said. A sound rumbled above them, deeper and heavier than before. A chain of explosions rolled across the ruins, shaking dust loose from the beams. Kai grabbed the scanner. The structural collapse is accelerating. This place will be rubble in minutes. Aelyra nodded toward the far hallway. The Canyon Ridge tunnel is close. But the energy surge from the fight may have alerted more hunters. Kai steadied his breath. Then we move now. They hurried down the corridor, the lights flickering overhead. Aelyra's movements grew smoother with each step as her stabilized brace adapted. She pressed a hand to her chest plate, feeling the restored vents drawing in cold, breathable air. If we reach the ridge, she said, there is an old signal tower. If it still functions, we can call for evacuation. From your people? Kai asked. Her silence was immediate and heavy. They will not expect me to be with a human, she said at last. They may react, unpredictably. Kai slowed. Meaning violently? Her eyes met his. Meaning they will question why you are alive. Before Kai could respond, a roar echoed through the tunnel ahead. The temperature dropped, and sparks showered from the ceiling as a massive silhouette emerged through the dust, scraping claws dragging along the walls. Aelyra drew a long breath. A guardian beast, she whispered. It must have escaped containment after the blast. Kai's grip on his plasma cutter tightened. Please tell me it is nearsighted. It is not. The creature's eyes ignited with a burning blue glow as it lowered its head toward them. Aelyra stepped in front of Kai, armor bracing with a low mechanical growl. Stay close, she said. This fight will not be easy. Kai swallowed hard. They have not been easy so far. The creature roared, and the tunnel shook as it charged straight for them, forcing human and alien to stand together as the darkness erupted around them. The guardian beast lunged with a force that shook the tunnel, its claws shredding through metal plating as it barreled toward Aelyra and Lieutenant Kai Mercer. The air rippled with the creature's roar, a low, vibrating thunder that rattled Kai's bones. Aelyra planted her feet, her damaged armor glowing with a dull, defiant pulse. She shifted into a defensive stance, one arm sweeping back to shield Kai instinctively. Move when I say move, she commanded. The beast struck. Aelyra met the impact head-on, her forearm plates clashing against the creature's horned skull with a blast of sparks. The shockwave threw Kai backward, but he caught himself against the wall, breath ripping from his lungs. The beast snapped its jaws inches from Aelyra's face, blue flame flickering between rows of jagged teeth. She grunted and redirected the creature's weight, slamming its head into the floor with a force that sent cracks spidering across the metal surface. Kai, she shouted. Find something to blind it. Kai scrambled to the ruined lab equipment lining the walls. Most devices were broken beyond recognition, but a shattered stasis tank pulsed faintly with emergency power. Kai ripped free the coolant regulator, sparks jumping across his gloves. He twisted the valve open. A plume of freezing mist blasted outward. Aelyra, move. She rolled. Aside. Kai hurled the regulator at the beast, and liquid coolant sprayed into its eyes. The creature shrieked, rearing back, its vision clouding with frost. Aelyra dashed forward, raking her armored fist across its snout with a strike that echoed like thunder. The beast staggered, but not enough. It recovered with terrifying speed, kicking Aelyra with a sweep of its massive limb and sending her crashing into the wall so hard the metal buckled. Kai's heart lurched. Aelyra. She hit the ground, gasping as her armor struggled to stabilize. The creature turned toward her, claws scraping sparks as it advanced. Kai gripped his plasma cutter until his knuckles ached. Hey, over here. The beast paused. Then it charged him. Kai's vision tunneled. He dove aside at the last second, the creature's jaws snapping shut where he had stood. He rolled to his knees, igniting the cutter and slashing at the beast's flank. The blade left a glowing streak, but the creature barely flinched. It swung its tail, the impact knocking Kai across the tunnel and slamming him against a broken console. Pain detonated through his ribs. His vision dimmed for a moment, but he forced himself upright. Aelyra staggered to her feet, armor flickering as she redirected energy from her vents to her limbs. Kai, stay down. Not happening. The beast lunged at her again. This time she caught it lower, using its own momentum to spin it sideways. She drove her knee into its ribs, armor cracking against bone. The creature roared, lashing wildly. Aelyra looked at Kai, eyes sharp with urgency. There is a power load bearing above us. If you overload it when the creature is beneath. Kai was already moving, clutching his plasma cutter as he sprinted toward the exposed ceiling junction. He climbed onto a collapsed support column, sparks raining around him as he slashed open the conduit. Aelyra, get clear. She vaulted backward just as the beast lunged beneath the junction. Kai jammed the cutter into the exposed wiring. A blinding surge shot through the tunnel, and the ceiling plate collapsed with a deafening crash, slamming down onto the creature in an avalanche of metal. The roar cut off abruptly. Dust filled the air. Silence followed, thick and trembling. Kai climbed down, coughing. Is it dead? Aelyra approached the rubble, chest rising and falling with each heavy breath. She placed a hand on the fallen debris, listening for vibration. None came. It is finished, she said. Her armor dimmed, settling from combat mode. She turned toward Kai, and something in her expression softened. You faced a guardian beast with only a plasma cutter and reckless courage. Kai winced as he pressed a hand to his bruised ribs. I am versatile. Aelyra stepped closer, her eyes lingering on him. You are something far rarer than that. Before Kai could respond, the tunnel shook again. A deeper, heavier rumble rolled through the outpost. Aelyra's posture tensed. The main reactor is destabilizing. We have very little time. Kai nodded, inhaling sharply. Then let us reach that signal tower. They moved forward together, the dim lights flickering above them as they disappeared deeper into the collapsing ruins, unaware of the next danger waiting in the dark ahead. Icy wind funneled through the fractured tunnel as Lieutenant Kai Mercer and Aelyra Voss pushed deeper into the collapsing outpost, their footsteps echoing off warped metal and cracked stone. The guardian beast's crushed body lay far behind them, but the weight of its roar still pressed on Kai's ribs. Flickering lights cast broken shadows across the corridor, and every few seconds, the entire structure shuddered with a low groan as the reactor core destabilized somewhere below. Aelyra moved ahead with a steadier gait now, her recalibrated brace fully synced to her limbs. Her armor emitted a soft rhythmic pulse that blended with the hum of failing power lines overhead. Kai kept up, though each breath stabbed his side from the earlier impact. He refused to slow down. The signal tower should be beyond this sector, Aelyra said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. Once we reach open air, I can attempt contact. Kai nodded. And pray your people do not shoot me on sight. She glanced back, and the faint glow in her eyes softened. If they do, they will answer to me. Kai blinked, unsure how to respond. He focused on the path ahead. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to squeeze between collapsed support beams. As they climbed over a mound of debris, Kai's scanner crackled with interference. A ghostly ping flashed across the display. Hold up, Kai whispered. Movement. Aelyra froze. Her armor bristled, plates fanning out slightly like instinctive hackles. Show me. Kai angled the scanner. A single faint life sign flickered just beyond the bulkhead. On their right. Small. Weak. Not Seryth. Not human. That is a child-level signature, Aelyra murmured. But there were no civilians on this installation. Kai placed a hand on the dented wall panel. I am opening it. Aelyra lifted her arm. Stand back. The blast might trigger. Kai pulled the release latch. The panel slid open with a shriek. Inside the cramped compartment, curled into a trembling ball, was a small creature no taller than Kai's knee. Gray fur, thin limbs, terrified violet eyes staring up at them. Aelyra inhaled sharply. A shriven cub. Kai raised his hands gently. Hey there. It is all right. The cub recoiled, pressing itself into the corner. Aelyra knelt slowly, her massive form somehow softened by the dim glow of her armor. These creatures bond to battlefield installations, sensing danger. This one must have been caught in the blast. The cub whimpered. Kai felt his heart twist. We cannot leave it. Aelyra hesitated. Kai, shrivens carry pheromone distress markers. If we take it with us, hunters will track the scent. If we leave it, it dies. Aelyra's jaw flexed. She scanned the small creature again. The cub wheezed, its chest rising shallowly. Finally, Aelyra extended an armored hand. Come, little one. Surprisingly, the cub sniffed her palm, then pressed its head against her armor. She exhaled a breath Kai had never heard from her before, relief mixed with something gentler. She lifted the cub, cradling it against her chest plate. Let us go, she said. Quickly. As they continued forward, the cub made soft clicking noises, burrowing into the warmer crevice between two plates on Aelyra's armor. Kai smiled despite the tension. You are good with it. I have trained shrivens since youth, she replied. They are creatures of instinct, and they sense truth. Kai raised a brow. Truth. She looked over at him. You risked your life for someone you did not know. Twice. That is truth few warriors possess. Before Kai could answer, the tunnel rumbled violently. A massive fissure split across the ceiling and a fireburst of blue energy shot through the corridor. Reactor breach, Kai shouted. We need to run. Aelyra grabbed Kai's wrist, pulling him ahead with surprising strength. They sprinted through the narrowing passage, dodging falling debris as unstable plates collapsed behind them. The cub squeaked in fear, pressing its face into Aelyra's armor. "Just ahead," she shouted. They burst out of the tunnel into open air. A cold wind swept across the canyon ridge, carrying the metallic scent of storm pressure and ionized dust. The sky burned with streaks of orange and purple as the reactor's energy bled into the atmosphere. Kai doubled over, hands on his knees, lungs aching. Aelyra steadied him with a hand on his back. "The tower is there," she said, pointing toward a skeletal structure perched on the cliff's edge, its antenna bent but intact. They moved toward it, but halfway across the ridge, the cub stiffened. A low growl rumbled from its small body. Aelyra's armor flared. Kai's scanner lit up with multiple hostile markers closing fast. Aelyra shifted into defensive stance. "Hunters," she whispered. "Many of them." Kai's stomach dropped. "They tracked the cub?" "Or they tracked me," she said. Her eyes met his. "Either way, they are coming." The wind howled across the ridge. The storm clouds churned. And at the far end of the canyon, dark silhouettes began to emerge, one by one, closing in like a tightening net. The storm winds ripped across the canyon ridge as Lieutenant Kai Mercer and Aelyra Voss stood shoulder to shoulder, the shriven cub trembling against her armored chest. The sky churned with streaks of violet and orange, the dying reactor below sending shockwaves through the unstable landscape. Kai's scanner flashed rapidly, the hostile markers closing in with the precision of trained killers. Aelyra's armor bristled, vents opening and closing as the living plates adjusted to combat mode despite their earlier damage. "They are hunter elites," she said, her voice a low steady pulse beneath the roar of the wind. "Once they have locked on a target, they do not stop until it is dead." Kai swallowed hard. "And I assume I am included in that target list." Aelyra glanced at him, and for a heartbeat her expression softened. "I will not allow them to harm you." Before he could answer, the first wave emerged from the swirling dust. Dark silhouettes advanced in perfect formation, each armored figure moving with predatory grace. Their visors glowed a deep crimson, reflecting the storm light with an eerie gleam. Kai took a step back. "Aelyra, that is at least a dozen." "Then we must not let them surround us," she said. She lifted the cub and placed it in Kai's arms. The small creature clung to him, trembling. "Take the cub and move toward the signal tower. I will hold them off." Kai tightened his hold on the cub. "Absolutely not. I am not leaving you alone." Aelyra stepped closer, her height looming but her voice quiet. "Kai, listen to me. You have saved my life twice. You have stabilized my armor. You have stood beside me when any other human would have run. But this is not your fight." Thunder cracked across the ridge as the hunter elites began to sprint, their movements coordinated with terrifying precision. Aelyra lifted her hands, energy gathering beneath her palms as her armor ignited with shimmering blue veins. "Go," she commanded. Kai did not move. Instead, he took position beside her. "You said Shriven sensed truth. Then listen to this truth. I am not leaving your side." Aelyra froze, not in fear, but in stunned disbelief. For a moment, her armor's glow wavered. Then something inside her shifted. The plates along her shoulders retracted slightly, her stance adjusting to accommodate him. "Very well," she said. "We stand together." The first hunter lunged. Aelyra met the strike with a sweeping blow that sent sparks across the ridge. Kai dodged beneath her arm, setting the cub down behind a cluster of rocks before drawing his plasma cutter. He slashed at the nearest hunter's leg, forcing it off balance long enough for Aelyra to drive her knee into its chest, crushing its core unit. Two more hunters flanked from the right. Aelyra spun, her damaged armor straining to compensate. Kai caught his breath as she blocked twin blades with her forearms, metal shrieking under the force. She pushed back with a burst of kinetic energy, sending both attackers skidding across the ground. Another hunter charged Kai directly. He ducked, rolling under its blade, and drove the plasma cutter into the soft joint behind its knee. The hunter buckled and fell, allowing Aelyra to finish it with a brutal downward strike. "I told you to run," she said, panting. "And I told you no." Kai shot back. The storm intensified, loose gravel whipping across the ridge as more hunters appeared at the far edge. Aelyra's armor flickered, warning lights chasing each other across her chest plate. She was weakening. Kai stepped in front of her, arms spread. "Enough. You want her? You go through me." The lead hunter paused, scanning him. Its voice came out. metallic and cold. Human, step aside. The warrior is compromised. Protocol demands her termination. Over my dead body, Kai growled. Aelyra pulled him back gently, her voice low but burning with intensity. Kai, they do not understand what you did for me. They do not understand your compassion. To them, you are interference. Then educate them, Kai said. Show them who you are. Show them why you are worth saving. Aelyra stepped forward. Her armor expanded along her spine, releasing a pulse of deep blue energy that illuminated the ridge. The hunters stiffened, their systems reacting to the command signal she emitted. Kai watched in awe as her voice rang across the battlefield, powerful and resonant. I am Aelyra Voss, she declared. First blade of the Seryth vanguard. You will stand down. The hunters faltered. Their visors flickered. Confusion rippled through their formation. Then, slowly, the lead hunter lowered its blade. But just as Aelyra took a step forward, the shriven cub let out a sharp, panicked cry that echoed across the ridge. The hunter's visors surged back to crimson. The distress pheromone, Aelyra whispered. It triggered them. They believe we are compromised. Kai tightened the plasma cutter in his grip. So now what? Aelyra's gaze hardened. Now, Kai Mercer, we run. The hunters roared and charged as human and aliens sprinted toward the signal tower, the storm tearing at their heels. Icy dust spiraled across the ridge as Lieutenant Kai Mercer and Aelyra Voss sprinted toward the signal tower, the shriven cub clinging desperately to Kai's chest. Behind them, the hunter elites thundered across the canyon floor, their metallic strides synchronized with lethal intent. Lightning forked across the storm-churned sky, illuminating jagged cliffs and the skeletal silhouette of the tower ahead. Aelyra's armor flickered with warning lights as she pushed forward, every stride fueled by sheer determination rather than remaining strength. Kai, keep moving, she shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him over a fractured slab of stone. He stumbled but regained his balance, clutching the cub tighter. I am trying. It would help if the ground stopped shifting every few seconds. The ridge trembled violently, cracks splitting open beneath their feet as reactor shockwaves rippled up through the canyon. A section of ground collapsed behind them, taking two hunters with it as they tumbled into the abyss. But more continued the pursuit. Aelyra glanced back, her jaw tightening. They are not slowing. They will reach us before we reach the tower. Kai scanned the terrain desperately. We need something to slow them down. There is nothing, Aelyra said. Unless, she suddenly seized Kai's wrist, pulling him toward a narrow rock ledge spiraling around the cliffside. Kai stared at it with horror. You want us to go onto that? It is barely wide enough for one person. It is our only chance, she replied. Hunters are heavier. The ledge may not support their weight. Kai took a deep breath. Fine. After you. They stepped onto the ledge, hugging the cliffside as wind whipped around them. The shriven cub buried its face into Kai's chest as pebbles skittered off the edge, falling into darkness far below. Aelyra moved with practiced precision, her armor adjusting to maintain stability. Kai followed shakily, each step sending a jolt of fear up his spine. The hunters reached the ledge moments later. The first one stepped on fully, and the rock cracked under its weight. The hunter plummeted instantly. Kai exhaled a shaky breath. 1 down. 11 to go, Aelyra muttered. The remaining hunters redistributed their weight, moving more cautiously in single formation. Aelyra's eyes narrowed. They are adapting. Of course they are, Kai groaned. Why would anything be simple today? A sudden boom erupted across the ridge. They both turned. A massive reactor surge burst from the canyon floor, sending shockwaves up the cliff walls. The ledge shattered behind them, forcing the hunters to leap forward. Aelyra shoved Kai ahead. Run! Kai sprinted, heart pounding as loose stones gave way beneath each footstep. Aelyra stayed behind him, her movements precise, her armor straining with every jump. They reached a wider plateau near the base of the tower. Aelyra grabbed Kai's shoulder and pushed him behind a large outcropping of stone. Stay down. She turned just as the lead hunter leaped from the collapsing ledge, landing in front of her with a ground-shaking slam. Aelyra met the attack instantly, bracing with her damaged armor. The clash sent shockwaves through the plateau. Kai ducked as debris flew past. He set the cub down behind him and activated his plasma cutter. Aelyra moved left. She shifted just as Kai charged forward, swinging the cutter in a wide arc. The blade grazed the hunter's flank, severing power cables that sparked violently. The hunter whipped around toward Kai, blade raised. Aelyra lunged between them, taking the blow across her shoulder plate. The armor cracked with a deafening snap. Aelyra stumbled, but did not fall. Kai, she breathed, get to the tower. Not without you. Two more hunters vaulted onto the plateau. Aelyra grabbed Kai by the front of his suit, pulling him close, her breath trembling against his visor. You must trust me. If you reach the tower, you can activate the beacon manually. My people will detect it and kill me the moment they arrive. Not if they understand what you have done. She held his gaze. Kai Mercer, you have shown a warrior of the Seryth something I did not believe existed. Do not let that be for nothing. Before he could respond, a hunter tackled her, slamming her into the ground. She roared in pain. Kai's heart lurched. Aelyra. She forced out one last command. Run. Kai grabbed the cub and sprinted up the final incline toward the signal tower as Aelyra battled 3 hunters at once. The storm howled. The plateau shook. And behind him, he heard Aelyra's strained scream, followed by the sickening crack of armor breaking. Lieutenant Kai Mercer stumbled up the final incline toward the signal tower, lungs burning, the shriven cub clinging to his chest with tiny claws that pierced through his suit padding. The storm roared around him, whipping dust and shards of gravel across the ridge like a knife-edged tide. But none of that compared to the sound he had just heard behind him. The brutal crack of Aelyra's armor breaking under the weight of 3 hunter elites. His legs wanted to turn back, but her last command echoed through his mind, firm and unyielding. Run. Kai forced himself forward, boots slipping on uneven rock as the signal tower loomed above, a skeletal metal structure battered by years of storms and neglect. He reached the access terminal at its base, a rusted console half buried beneath debris. The screen flickered weakly when he slammed his palm against it. Come on, he pleaded, entering a manual bypass. Sparks leaped out from the exposed wiring. The terminal gave a low, pained hum. Behind him, the plateau shook violently. He turned. Aelyra was still fighting. Through the sheets of dust and lightning, Kai glimpsed her battered form. One hunter pinned her left arm, another held her down by the throat, and the third drove a blade into her shoulder plate, sparks erupting outward. Aelyra roared, a sound torn from somewhere deep in her chest, the kind of roar a warrior gives when refusing to die. Her armor flared with desperate energy, vents blasting steam as she twisted with raw force, flinging one hunter aside long enough to shove the blade wielder back. Kai felt his heart jolt. She was still fighting, still refusing to surrender. Hold on, Aelyra, he whispered. Just a little longer. The shriven cub pressed its head against his chin, trembling. Kai tightened his grip on it before setting it gently behind the console, away from the danger. He tore open the back of the terminal, exposing the corroded circuits. His fingers worked frantically, reconnecting wires, stabilizing the failing power feed, overriding the ancient lockout protocol. He had repaired engines mid-flight, sealed hull breaches with nothing but scrap metal, and rebuilt broken plasma injectors in the middle of a firestorm. But nothing had ever mattered this much. The tower groaned, its antenna struggling to rise through the storm. One motor sputtered. Another jammed. He slammed his fist on the panel. Do not quit on me now. With a final shudder, the antenna extended fully, crackling with electrical discharge as it pierced the storm clouds. Kai entered the activation code Aelyra had taught him. A piercing beacon pulse shot into the sky, cutting through the rotating clouds like a blue spear of light. Signal sent, Kai breathed. They have to see that. A scream ripped across the ridge. Kai spun around just in time to see Aelyra collapse onto one knee as a hunter slammed a gauntlet fist into her ribs. Her armor shattered along the side, exposing glowing organic tissue. Aelyra. Kai sprinted toward her. The closest hunter turned toward him, blade rising. Aelyra surged upward with the last reserves of her strength, grabbing the hunter by the wrist and yanking it backward with a vicious twist. Do not touch him, she snarled, slamming the attacker's helmet into the ground hard enough to crack metal. But another hunter drove its knee into her back, knocking her flat. Kai skidded across the ground beside her, dropping to his knees. He cupped her face with shaking hands, visor to visor, ignoring the hunters closing in. Her breathing was shallow. Her armor flickered with fading light. Kai, she whispered, her voice trembling. You activated the beacon. Yes, he choked. Help is coming. Stay with me. She reached up with a shaking hand, her fingers tracing the side of his helmet. I did not think a human would fight like this. For me. Kai felt his throat tighten. I am not leaving you. Ever. The hunters stepped closer, blades raised for the final strike. Aelyra forced her body in front of Kai's, shielding him with her broken armor. If this is the end, she breathed, then I die protecting you. The storm roared. The hunters lifted their weapons. Then, a distant thunder grew louder. Engines. Many of them. A glowing formation of Seryth warships burst through the storm clouds overhead, descending with the fury of a falling star. The sky split open with the thunder of descending Seryth warships, their hulls carved in sweeping arcs of silver and indigo that glowed as they tore through the storm clouds. The hunter elites froze mid-strike, their crimson visors flickering in confusion. A shockwave burst across the ridge as the lead warship deployed a gravitational brake, a shimmering pressure that rolled over the canyon like a tidal wave. Kai Mercer shielded his eyes from the blast of wind, his heart pounding as the hunters turned toward the incoming fleet. Aelyra Voss, bleeding and barely conscious, lifted her head just enough to see the ships above. A flicker of something, relief, disbelief, exhaustion, crossed her face. They came, she whispered. They saw your beacon. Kai held her closer. Help is here. Hold on. The hunters reevaluated instantly. Their formation shifted, blades retracting as their systems reassessed the new threat. The lead hunter tilted its head, receiving orders through some unseen channel. The decision came quickly. Terminate objectives and retreat. All three hunters raised their weapons for a final synchronized kill. But the sky answered first. A bolt of blue plasma ripped down from one of the warships, carving a molten line between the hunters and Kai. The explosion hurled the attackers backward in a shower of sparks and metal shards. From the flagship's underside, a landing skiff shot downward, engines howling as it homed in on the battlefield. The vessel slammed into the ridge with a blast that shook loose gravel and dust. Its doors hissed open, and a squad of Seryth honor guards stormed out, their polished armor catching the storm light like mirrored flame. At their front stood a tall figure, whose presence bent the air around her. Regal armor, silver crest, a gaze like sharpened crystal. Kai recognized her instantly from every database humans had ever collected about their greatest rival. High Commander Aelyra Voss, Aelyra's sister. She strode across the ridge with the unbreakable certainty of someone born to command. Her voice cut through the storm. Stand down. The remaining hunters froze. Their crimson visors dimmed to black as they dropped to one knee, blades deactivating. In one gesture, the battle ended. Seryth stopped before Kai and Aelyra, her eyes tracing the brutal damage across her sister's armor. For the first time, a crack formed in her icy composure. Aelyra, she whispered, kneeling beside her. Aelyra managed a faint smile. Sarah, you took your time. Seryth exhaled shakily. You should not even be alive. Aelyra's gaze drifted toward Kai. You can thank him for that. Seryth turned her attention to the human, her expression sharpening into something unreadable. Explain, she commanded. Kai swallowed, nerves buzzing, but he refused to look away. She could not breathe. Her armor was killing her. I fixed it. Then I kept her alive long enough for you to find us. Seryth studied him, her eyes narrowing as though she was trying to see the truth beneath his skin. Humans are not known for risking themselves for Seryth. Kai shrugged slightly, heart pounding. Maybe you have been looking at the wrong humans. Silence stretched between them, thick with storm pressure and wounded pride. Then Seryth spoke softly. You saved the first blade of the Vanguard. Twice. Kai nodded. And I would do it again. Behind them, the shriven cub whimpered. Seryth's gaze flicked toward it, then back to Kai. You carried a pheromone-bearing creature while hunted. That alone should have killed you. I am stubborn, Kai said. Aelyra let out a weak laugh. Very stubborn. Seryth's expression shifted, less suspicion, more realization. She stood and addressed her soldiers. Retrieve my sister. And bring the human. Kai tensed. Am I under arrest? No, Seryth said. You are under my protection. The honor guards carefully lifted Aelyra, stabilizing her broken armor. As they carried her toward the skiff, Aelyra reached out. Her fingers brushed against Kai's wrist. Walk with me, she whispered. He did. Slowly, step by step. The storm quieted as they approached the skiff, the engines casting a soft blue glow across Aelyra's face. She looked up at him, tired but alive. Kai Mercer, she murmured. You were not meant to be part of my story. He swallowed. I do not believe that. Her eyes softened, glowing faintly. Neither do I. The honor guards paused, allowing her one last moment. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of metal and ionized dust. Aelyra held his gaze. You fixed more than my armor. The skiff doors opened, flooding the ridge with warm interior light. Aelyra's hand slipped from his as she was lifted aboard, but her eyes never left his. For one silent second, the entire battlefield stilled. The warships above hummed like distant stars. The storm parted just enough for a sliver of pale light to shine through. Kai stood alone on the ridge, breath steadying, chest aching with something he could not name. The shriven cub pressed against his leg, as if sensing it too. Aelyra's voice lingered in his mind like an echo carried by the wind. And for the first time since the outpost had fallen, the sky did not feel hostile. It felt open, waiting. In a galaxy carved by power, cruelty, and endless conflict, a single act of mercy had changed the fate of two enemies forever. And somewhere inside the rising flagship, Aelyra Voss closed her eyes, allowing herself a rare moment of stillness. The stars reflected in them, and for the first time, they looked human.